Hey, I'm Nicole Ferraro, a contributing editor at Light Reading. Welcome to What's the Story, a short podcast where we take a step back from the most significant topics in telecom to tell you the latest news, how we got here, what it all means, and what to expect next. This week on the show, we're talking with Light Reading's Mike Dano about a recent request for information issued by the U.S. Department of Defense that may or may not further the Trump administration's apparent interest in a nationalized 5G network. We'll also talk a bit about the company Rivada, which has close ties to the administration, what role it's playing in all of this, and why it matters.
Thanks to Avast for their sponsorship this week. Avast's award-winning security solutions make it easy for your customers to stay safe online, no matter how many devices they use. Learn more at avast.com/partners. That's avast.com/partners.
So let's talk about this request for information from the Department of Defense. Can you say more about it, what it's for, and whether it pertains to the development of a nationalized 5G network?
Yeah. So, a lot of things to go through there, and the first thing I'll do is I'll start this off with a slight clarification that the Department of the U.S. military, the U.S. Department of Defense did issue that RFI, but they did not say that it's a nationalized network. And so the language is very vague, and that RFI raised a lot of red flags basically all over the industry. And the reason, so to take one small step back, the reason that they're doing this, so the U.S. military uses a crap load of spectrum. They have been allocated an enormous amount of spectrum for their operations, whether it's radar, whether it's communicating with different troops, whatever it is. They have a lot of spectrum. And there's an argument that they don't need all that spectrum, that some of that spectrum should be taken away from the U.S. military and given to commercial interests such as 5G. So that's kind of where this is all starting, is that the 5G carriers like AT&T and Verizon, they say we need more spectrum. Where are we going to get it from? Well, we could probably get some from the U.S. military. And for years and years, the U.S. military has said, no, we cannot give you any spectrum. We need it all. And so this RFI is sort of it's noteworthy because it is another sign that the U.S. military is actually willing to give away some of its spectrum. However, some of my sources have explained that no U.S. government agency wants to give up its spectrum without getting something in return. And that, I think, is what is behind this particular RFI. What they're saying is, we'll consider giving up some of our spectrum. However, if we do that, we get some of that network. If you build this network with our spectrum, we get to use it too, is essentially what this RFI is saying. But it is only a request for information, and it's very vague. It does indicate that the DoD wants to retain some ownership of that spectrum. And so it's kind of being conflated with this idea of the U.S. government building its own network, but it's not exactly the same thing.
Okay.
But it's very close.
Okay, got it.
And so that's where the RFI is. Okay. So they issued the RFI. Oh, and by the way, so I've been doing a lot of reporting on this, and it is you definitely, it's an Alice in Wonderland, through the looking glass kind of experience. So the RFI comments were due last week, and everyone was like, "Okay, we're gonna get all these comments. We're gonna see what everybody's talking about." Well, they haven't published them. I asked the DoD directly, "Are you going to publish these?" And they said, "I don't know." So, I mean, from top to bottom, this is messed up, and a big reason why this is messed up is because the White House Office of Science and Technology announced that a portion of this spectrum that is involved in the RFI, that they had already agreed to give it to the FCC to auction, right? So that announcement happened in September. Then in October, the DoD issued this RFI for the exact same spectrum, for a portion of that exact same spectrum, which means that there are two different government agencies starting two separate processes to release this same spectrum, which is not good. And
No.
what it means is that there is no organization within the US government on how to move forward with this kind of stuff. So there's lots of questions about this whole process, but that is one very clear takeaway, that the left hand is not talking to the right hand in the US government. And I think it is very fair to argue that this goes all the way up to the top to President Trump and simply the way that he manages things. It is very chaotic. No decisions are ever made. Decisions can be changed. There's just no one knows what's happening. And from all the people I've talked to and involved in this, that is one clear takeaway, is that there's no ownership, no organization, no plan, no planning, unclear end goal. Chaos. It is just chaos.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. More of the same.
More of the same.
Yeah.
A lot of standpoints, even for those of us, way down in the trenches of wireless spectrum, it is certainly spilled into our little area. So, and then you mentioned this. So that's kind of where the RFI is right now, and so we don't know. There have been rumors that there's going to be more that is going to happen on this whole topic. There's rumors that there is going to be an RFP, a request for proposal, which is sort of a more standard official, like, okay, we're going to move forward with this kind of thing. We have not seen that yet. It is unclear whether it will come. The FCC, for its part, is already moving ahead with its plan to auction that same spectrum, despite the fact that the DoD has got this other thing that it's doing, whatever it might be. And also, all the requests, all the filings for the RFI are not being made public, so we don't know what's happening. But it certainly has generated a lot of commentary within the industry, this RFI, because the implication of this RFI is that the DoD will release its spectrum by itself without going through the standard process of giving it to the NTIA, which gives it to the FCC to auction. That is the standard process by which spectrum is allocated for 5G or anything else. And because the DoD is not doing that, it is causing a lot of consternation among all of the companies or all of the commercial interests that use spectrum, including the 5G industry. So there's a lot of sort of hair pulling within Washington, D.C. about, well, what's going on here? Well, what's happened in response to this DoD RFI is a lot. The whole wireless industry has rebelled against it with very public letters and comments about it. Everybody is freaking out. And also a group of bipartisan GOP and Democrat people in Congress have called this out as being not a good idea. What they're doing is, in criticizing the DoD's RFI, they are saying that this is another attempt by the Trump administration to nationalize 5G, quote unquote, nationalize 5G. That's what they're worried about. And so, and that's where this company called Rivada comes in. The opponents to this whole RFI process, this whole thing, what they're saying is that Rivada is the problem. Rivada is the one that is pushing this idea of nationalized 5G. Rivada, for its part, is saying, no, that's not the case. They're saying that, we're just a startup company. We have a good idea, and we want to make use of this DoD spectrum in this particular way, which is not nationalized. It's this other thing they call wholesale. And there is a difference between wholesale Rivada, what they're proposing, and a nationalized 5G. There is a difference, but it's a little bit like splitting hairs. Both of them are not the standard process by which you would auction spectrum. So it kind of depends on, which side do you fall on? Do you fall on the Rivada side, which says, hey, we're just this startup company and we've got this good idea about wholesaling spectrum? Or do you fall on the other side where it's like Rivada is, cronyism at its worst, and it's an end run around the standard process, and it's just going to result in a payout to a bunch of Trump lackeys. Those are the sort of two viewpoints that you can look at this thing.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about Rivada. Tell me more about the company's history and what role it's playing in all of this right now.
So Rivada is a very interesting company. So to start on, so the story of Rivada goes back about 20 years when it was it's a company that is founded by an Irish businessman who made a whole bunch of money dealing, I think it's in forestry things in Russia and then aluminum things in Latvia. Like, it has some interesting beginnings. 20 years ago, Rivada and its founder, I think you pronounce his name Declan Ganley. Declan Ganley. So 20 years ago, Rivada and this Declan Ganley was attempting to build a wireless network in Iraq after the Gulf War. So they show up there. And since then, they've been attempting to build wireless networks in different countries for the government itself, including in Mexico. They bid on a contract for that. They also tried it in the U.S. They bid for the FirstNet contract, and so and AT&T eventually won the FirstNet contract, and Rivada lost it. Interestingly, what's incredible is that literally just this week, it turns out that Rivada is also pushing for the construction of a 5G network in Jamaica, and they are working with the Jamaican government to build a 5G network for that country. So yeah, the strings on Rivada are the storyline here is very deep and complex. Now, when it comes to this DoD RFI, what is what a lot of critics of Rivada are bringing up is that Rivada has a number of high-level associates of Trump that are involved with Rivada, including being paid by Rivada. So Karl Rove is a longtime GOP strategist. He is on the payroll for Rivada and is lobbying for Rivada. Peter Thiel is a billionaire. He is invested in Rivada, and he is known to be a close Trump associate. But there are people who are sort of siding with Rivada who are apparently not related to the company at all, such as Eric Schmidt, who is the former chief executive of Google, is pushing for a proposal that is very similar to the one that Rivada is pushing. So, you can say that it's they're backed by a bunch of Trump cronies. Well, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case, but there certainly are a lot of sort of Trump orbit people who are dealing with Rivada. So anyway, Rivada did submit a filing with the DoD's RFI. But Rivada, for its part, says, no, we do not support nationalized 5G. That is not what we support. Instead, we support this whole wholesale thing that they've been pushing. And they liken it to the energy market in Texas. They say that's what they want to do to Spectrum. They want to create a wholesale market for it, and then commercial entities can purchase it from a wholesale management company, which would be Rivada. So that's what Rivada is doing. So what's interesting here, though, is that Rivada does not operate in the sort of staid and boring way of discussing these issues. Instead, they've been very vocal, very aggressive, and I'll happily point out that light reading has risen to the level to be recognized by Declan Ganley himself, the Rivada CEO. He wrote an essay in Morning Consult, the publication, and linked specifically to our story, the light reading story about Rivada and this whole thing. And he talks about how op-ed writers, analysts, and plain old reporters, and that one linked to me, it says, have been deployed to oppose his plans. So I actually did reach out to the press person for Rivada and said I made sure that he knew that I had not been deployed by anyone. I want to know what's happening, and so we exchanged some friendly emails about that. And I mean that entirely. I'm not being sarcastic. We're on friendly terms. But certainly, my understanding is that this Declan Ganley did not fully appreciate the way that I explained his plan and described him personally, and so he was taking shots at us as well as a result, which is fine. That's kind of how this works. But he's definitely a very outspoken person about this whole issue, and is really pushing hard for the idea of having the U.S. military, essentially lease its spectrum and then provide it on a wholesale basis to others. So he's pushing on that real hard. And that's kind of where it is right now. Is that there is no RFP yet? The RFI is still out there. We don't know what's going to happen with it, and so it certainly seems like everything has stalled. And then one last thing I'll mention about Rivada is that there's been a lot of discussion about Rivada. Well, about whether they're sort of a legitimate player in this whole thing. They've certainly been involved in discussions about wireless networks all over the world for years and years. Well, I did ask them, what you've been talking about this for so long. What networks have you actually built? Because that's been one of the criticisms about them, is that they have not actually built any networks in all these years of talking about it. And they did respond to my question about that. They said that Rivada has operated, the networks that Rivada has operated have been special purpose or as ad hoc networks for government agencies, and they did not provide any specifics. So that's not a good sign. If somebody asks you, well, what have you done? And you respond with very vague and, no specifics, that's not a good sign for
definitely not.
Wants to manage the U.S. government spectrum resources in the rest of 5G between U.S. and China.
All right. So finally, what role do you think that our upcoming election is going to play in how all of this turns out?
I think it will certainly have an impact on it. And obviously, it could go one of two ways. Trump could win or Biden could win. And depending on who wins, that will have a very large impact on what happens here. I think that if Trump wins, he will move forward with whatever this is. It's still not clear what it is. We just don't know. Trump has not given us a healthcare plan. He has not given us an economic plan. He has also not given us a plan for what he calls a national 5G network. The phrase national 5G network is included in his re-election platform. It is one of the 51 things that he wants to do in his second term, is create a national 5G network. We don't know what that means. He has not provided any details. We literally have no idea what that means. But the fact that it's called a national 5G network, not increased 5G availability, none of that. It's a national 5G network. The fact that that is in his agenda for his second term indicates to me, from all that I have seen, that he wants this to happen. He wants the U.S. military to lease its spectrum to a company like Rivada that can manage it somehow, in some fashion. We don't know the details. I think that he wants to do this because this idea has been following him throughout his first term, and now here it is, for all of us to see in the agenda for his second term. So if he is elected, I believe that he will do something, that this will continue to happen, whatever it is. Whether that's good or bad, I won't take a side on that, but it will definitely continue in some fashion. So if Biden is elected, I think that a very different set of things will happen. I would suspect that he'll need to install his administration. He'll probably install a new head for the FCC. And that's literally going to delay everything by 6 months. Some people think to a year, which means that any spectrum that we had hoped to get for 5G is going to be delayed because Biden will be sort of, implementing his own stuff. Whether that's good or bad, again, I'm not going to take a side on that, but I think that is what people are seeing is going to happen. And most likely, I think a lot of people are hoping for sort of a return to normalcy in terms of spectrum management, where, the NTIA plays its historic role, the FCC plays its historic role, and we have sort of substantive debates about how to, what's the best way to handle this spectrum, how is it best to be released, should it be allocated for 5G? I think that is what most people are expecting, is sort of a general return to sort of a normal process for the allocation of the United States to spectrum. And then the final thing, though, that is probably worth noting is that there are very strong indications that Biden will bring back net neutrality. So if you thought you had seen the last of that, probably not. It seems like if Biden's elected, he's going to resurrect that whole discussion. Whether that has any impact, we'll see. whether it impacts this whole process, that remains to be seen. Probably not, but I think that's something that we can kind of expect under a President Biden.
Awesome. So a lot to keep your eyes on then.
Yes, thanks for letting me go on at length. And if we had another hour, we could go down more of these rabbit holes. Such as ownership stakes and all the things. There's lots of things.
Well, you're always welcome back here, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunities to go down all the rabbit holes. So thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike, for your time today. Thank you as well to our producer, Pierre Landrio, for making this episode, and thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review, share this episode with a colleague or friend, and subscribe to the Light Reading Podcast for more interviews and insights from the team. That's the story for now. We'll see you next time.
Thanks to Avast for their sponsorship this week. Avast's award-winning security solutions make it easy for your customers to stay safe online, no matter how many devices they use. Learn more at avast.com/partners. That's avast.com/partners.